Good evening, America. Tonight, three separate institutions are telling Donald Trump the same uncomfortable thing on the same day, and each one is doing it for a completely different reason. Iran's government is standing up in public, on camera, and denying nearly every major claim coming out of Washington about this peace deal. The United States Senate, for the very first time in this entire war, just passed a war powers resolution rebuking the president's authority to keep fighting. And independent fact-checkers, the same nonpartisan experts this channel has cited throughout this conflict, are confirming tonight that Trump's own claims about Iran's missiles and Iran's nuclear program do not match what the intelligence community and the IAEA actually know. Three different challenges to three different claims, all landing on the same day, 115 days into this war. Tonight, we are going through every single one of them, so you have the complete picture before anyone else gives it to you. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear is the most direct confrontation yet between what Washington is telling you and what is actually true. Let us start with the nuclear inspections dispute, because it strikes at the very heart of what this entire war was supposed to accomplish, and the two governments cannot even agree on the most basic facts. The Trump administration has told the American public repeatedly and through multiple officials that Iran agreed to readmit International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors as part of the peace framework. Vance called it a major milestone just one day ago in Switzerland. But tonight, Tehran is denying it outright. Iranian officials say they have not begun discussions on their nuclear program at all, and they have not agreed to invite IAEA inspectors back into the country. Not paused, not delayed, never agreed to it in the first place, according to Iran's own government. Here is what we actually know happened with the IAEA before this dispute even began. Iran maintains that its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, even though it possesses highly enriched uranium that the IAEA itself has said could be used to build atomic bombs if Iran chooses to do so. After last year's American bombing campaign, Iran denied IAEA inspectors access specifically to the nuclear facilities that were bombed, while still providing access at least once to facilities that were not struck. The head of Iran's atomic energy organization, Mohammad Islami, has said Iran will not permit inspections of the bombed facilities until the IAEA establishes formal protocols for inspecting internationally protected sites that have been subjected to military attack, and until the IAEA condemns the strikes themselves. That is Iran's actual stated position, and it has not changed. So when Vance told reporters in Switzerland that Iran agreed to readmit inspectors as a major milestone, and Iran's government turns around the very next day and says no such agreement was ever made, you are not watching a simple miscommunication. You are watching two governments that may have walked out of the same room with two entirely different understandings of what was actually agreed. And here is why that distinction matters enormously to every American watching this video. The IAEA reported, according to nonpartisan nuclear policy experts, that Iran's stockpile of 400 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% remains buried at Iran's nuclear complex near Isfahan, one of the very sites hit during the strikes last year. The IAEA has not had access to that site to verify what condition that material is actually in. If inspectors are not actually returning, as Iran now claims, then the single most dangerous open question of this entire war, the location and status of nearly 1,000 pounds of near-weapons-grade uranium, remains completely unverified by any independent international authority. Trump can announce milestones. Vance can call it major progress. But without inspectors physically present in Iran, none of those announcements can actually be confirmed by anyone outside the two governments making the claims. Now let us turn to the ballistic missile dispute, because this is where Iran's pushback became most personal, most public, and most directly tied to a historic moment in Iran's own internal politics. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian traveled to Islamabad, Pakistan this week for his first visit since the United States, and Israel launched their war on his country in February. During a news conference following his meeting with Pakistani officials, Pezeshkian made a direct statement about the Memorandum of Understanding his own government signed with the United States. He said there was no mention of Iran's missile program anywhere in that memorandum. none at all. And then he went further, framing Iran's missile arsenal not as a bargaining chip, but as the very thing that saved his country from destruction. He said, "If it was not for Iran's missile capabilities, our country would have been plundered and destroyed." He vowed to never compromise or negotiate Iran's missile capabilities under any circumstances at any point in the future. This statement directly contradicts what Trump has been telling the American public. NBC News reported just days ago that while Iran's ballistic missiles are not mentioned anywhere in the signed agreement, Trump has nonetheless said publicly that Iran has to have some restrictions on them going forward. So Trump is telling Americans the missile question is being addressed in some form. Iran's own president is standing in Pakistan telling the world the missile program was never on the table at all and never will be. Those are not two slightly different descriptions of an ambiguous situation. Those are two flatly contradictory claims about the contents of the same signed document. And here is where independent fact-checking organizations come in, because this is not the first time Trump's specific claims about Iran's missile and nuclear capabilities have been directly challenged by nonpartisan experts, and the pattern matters. FactCheck.org and the Center for Arms Control and Nonproliferation, both nonpartisan organizations with no political stake in this war, examined Trump's claims back in early March that Iran was developing missiles that would soon be able to strike the United States. Daryl Kimball of the Arms Control Association told these fact-checkers directly that Iran's longest-range deployed ballistic missile travels 2,000 kilometers, while the distance from Iran to the United States is roughly 10,000 kilometers. He noted that concerns about Iran developing long-range missiles are nothing new, and that a 1999 U.S. national intelligence estimate predicted Iran would face an intercontinental ballistic missile threat by 2015. It is now 2026. Emma Sandifer of the same organization said Iran has maintained a self-imposed missile range limit of 2,000 kilometers, and that there is little evidence Iran could build missiles reaching the United States in the near future. Multiple intelligence sources told the Express Tribune that Trump's specific claim about Iran soon having missiles capable of striking America was not supported by U.S. intelligence assessments and appeared exaggerated, with one unclassified Defense Intelligence Agency assessment putting that timeline as far out as 2035, not soon at all. This matters tonight because it establishes a documented pattern. This is not the first time independent experts have found gaps between what Trump claims about Iran's weapons capabilities and what the actual intelligence community assessments support. And tonight, with Pezeshkian publicly denying any missile restrictions exist in the signed deal at all, that pattern is continuing in real time. There is also the question of whether Iran even attempted to rebuild its nuclear program after last year's strikes, something Trump has claimed publicly. Kimball and Sandifer both told fact-checkers there is no evidence from the IAEA, from independent satellite imagery analysis, or from any evidence presented to Congress by the U.S. intelligence community that Iran was rebuilding its damaged nuclear facilities or preparing to restart enrichment. Satellite images from January did show repair activity at the Natanz and Isfahan facilities, but experts said this activity was more consistent with damage assessment than active reconstruction toward weapons capability. The distinction between repairing bomb damage and actively rebuilding a weapons program is significant, and independent experts say the evidence supports the former, not the latter, regardless of what claims have been made from podiums in Washington. Now let us turn to the third major story breaking tonight, the one that may carry the most immediate political consequences inside the United States itself. The Senate has, for the first time in this entire conflict, approved a war powers resolution as a direct rebuke to Trump over the Iran war. This is a historic moment. This channel has documented every previous attempt at a war powers resolution throughout this war. The House passed one earlier this month, 215 to 208, with 4 Republicans crossing party lines. Multiple Senate attempts before that had failed, 7 times according to earlier reporting on this channel. Tonight, for the first time, the Senate has joined the House in formally rebuking the president's continued military authority over this conflict. This is not a symbolic footnote. A war powers resolution passing both chambers of Congress even without enough support to override a presidential veto, represents the most serious institutional check on this war that the American constitutional system has produced in 115 days. It tells you that the erosion of political support for this war, which this channel has tracked from the earliest House votes through the cabinet resignations of Tulsi Gabbard and Joe Kent, through the MAGA backlash over the Reconstruction Fund, through Senator Wicker calling the deal a disaster, and Senator Graham questioning why the war was fought at all, has now reached the point where the Senate itself, a chamber controlled by Trump's own party, was willing to formally vote against his continued authority to wage this war. Let us also revisit the farmer payday story, because it connects directly to everything else happening today. Britannica's own real-time tracking of this conflict listed two headlines from the Associated Press published within the same hour today. One reads, "Trump administration touts Iran deal as a payday for U.S. farmers, but Iran denies it." The other reads, "U.S. and Iran dispute whether Tehran has agreed to nuclear inspections." Two separate disputes, both breaking on the same day, both following the exact same pattern this channel identified with the $300 billion Reconstruction Fund controversy weeks ago. The Trump administration makes a specific, concrete claim about what the deal delivers. Iran's government denies that specific claim entirely. And the American public is left trying to determine which government is describing the actual signed document accurately. Let us bring in one more piece of context that deserves direct attention tonight, because it shows that even amid all this institutional friction, some narrow areas of cooperation are continuing to function. The International Maritime Organization confirmed today that a plan to evacuate 11,000 crew members who have been stranded on ships throughout this crisis is being carried out in cooperation between Iran, Oman, every other coastal state in the region, the United States, and the global maritime industry. IMO Secretary General Arsenio Dominguez said necessary safety guarantees have been secured, and the conditions for safe navigation have been thoroughly verified to support these evacuation operations. 11,000 human beings, ordinary sailors and crew members from countries around the world, have been trapped on commercial vessels throughout this entire maritime crisis, unable to safely move in or out of the Strait of Hormuz region. Whatever the disputes over nuclear inspections, missile programs, and war powers resolutions, this single piece of humanitarian cooperation conducted jointly between Iran and the United States, despite everything else dividing them, represents genuine progress that deserves to be acknowledged clearly tonight. And there is one more deeply human detail from today's news that anchors everything else in this report. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif announced he will personally attend the Tehran funeral of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed in this war's opening airstrikes back on February 28th. That funeral, 4 months after his death, is still being planned and attended by foreign heads of government, a reminder that the man whose killing began this entire 115-day conflict is still being mourned formally on the world stage, even as his successor's government argues with Washington over missiles, uranium, and inspectors. Here is the complete picture as of tonight, June 23, 2026, day 115 of this war. Iran denies it has agreed to readmit IAEA inspectors, directly contradicting Vance's major milestone claim from one day earlier. Iran's President Pezeshkian, speaking in Pakistan, said the signed memorandum contains no mention of Iran's missile program whatsoever and vowed Iran will never negotiate that capability. The Senate passed a war powers resolution for the first time in this entire conflict, formally rebuking Trump's authority to continue this war. Independent fact-checkers have documented a consistent pattern of gaps between Trump's specific claims about Iran's weapons capabilities and what actual U.S. intelligence assessments support. Iran is separately denying the administration's framing of the deal as a farmer payday. And amid all of this institutional and diplomatic friction, 11,000 stranded crew members are finally being evacuated through genuine U.S.-Iran cooperation, while Pakistan's prime minister prepares to attend the funeral of the man whose death started this entire war. America, here's my question for you tonight. Iran is now denying nearly every specific claim the Trump administration has made about this peace deal, from nuclear inspections to missile restrictions to farmer benefits. The Senate just rebuked the president's war authority for the first time in this entire conflict. And independent fact-checkers have already documented a pattern of gaps between Trump's stated claims and the actual intelligence assessments. Here is what I want to know from you tonight. When the country you are negotiating with denies your own government's description of the deal point by point and your own Senate votes against your continued war authority, what does that tell you about how this peace is actually being managed? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This story is not over, and we will be here with you through every single contradiction as it unfolds.